Be joining you today. My name is Michael Lurie, part of the Fortnight group working with Steve and other colleagues, and have had the privilege of joining you in previous years. As you may know, I'm a partner at McKinsey leading this work. Actually, that's going to transition end of next week, where I take on the role of Chief Transformation Officer of Bayer, the global life sciences organization, from the beginning of October. But today, I'm more than excited to introduce Mark Hoplamazian, who is the CEO of Hyatt, well-known global organization in the hotel hospitality business. Mark is a truly visionary CEO who has done many remarkable things in building Hyatt as a company, navigating through the pandemic, which was one of the most challenging times in the history of the industry. But relevant for us today really has been the champion leading a fundamental evolution of the Hyatt organization. Bringing in principles and practices of agility into the organization. Mark, wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you, Michael. It's a great pleasure, and it's wonderful. Thank you for the invitation to join all of you in Lisbon.
Well, Mark, perhaps we can get started, and you can just share a little bit about context of the organization as it was maybe a couple of years ago, I guess. That spurred your interest in agility, and that led to you, undertaking this journey or beginning to explore this journey, let's say, and what it might mean for Hyatt.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll take you back to, I guess, pre-COVID period and reflect on the fact that, like many multinational companies that have grown relatively quickly into new countries and with new brands, there was a superstructure put together that was designed really with the outcome of having controls in place and consistency of how we would do things, and also consistency of how brands would be represented in different places. And I would say it works about as well as systems like that typically do, which is I think there wasn't nearly as much on the spot and on the ground innovation by market. I don't think it promoted us having better proximity to our guests in different markets. We were functioning well and performing well as a company. So there wasn't a burning platform from a performance perspective, but I certainly always believed in a more decentralized approach and being in ways that really rendered everything that we were doing unrecognizable. The industry had never experienced anything like this, where our demand was down 95% overnight and stayed that way for a several month period. And we realized that we were actually in a position in which we had to open our eyes and learn the environment from scratch. There was nothing that we could refer back to, no historical data set, no longitudinal analyses, no pricing models that would be useful. So we went to, I wouldn't say we, the organization, not we, the headquarters crew, started to be in discovery mode, and we were in discovery mode every single day. So trying to find demand wherever it existed, understanding how we could access demand like we've never accessed it before, and finding new people, the people who were traveling during that period of time, because our core customer base was not traveling. Our core customer base were primarily corporate executives who traveled on business, but they also traveled on holidays. They were at home. Working remotely. And so we realized we were in a whole new world. And what I saw blossom across the organization over the summer of 2020 was hundreds or thousands of different attempts to secure and discover demand. And that inspired me tremendously. By May, actually, so only 2 months after the shutdown in 2020, we sat down and said, okay, what are the things that in this very disrupted period of time might we actually turn to that wouldn't be possible in normal times? And one of the things, I'm not going to go into the details, but we have a certain structure that we had used for 45 years in how we charged hotel owners for services that we provided to them. And we've been trying to modernize and make more variable instead of more fixed that structure, but we've never been able to crack the code on how to do it without, engendering a massive amount of backlash. And it had to be done by the end of August, beginning of September, because it had to be built into the planning for the following year. So I sat down with the team and I said, okay, so we can actually address the funding model, except we have 12 weeks to do it. And everyone said, this is insane, we'll never do it. We've been working on this for 25 years, we can't get it done in 12 weeks. And we did. And the explicit intent was to run that process as an agile pod. And we appointed a very, very capable, open-minded leader who didn't know anything about the funding model to lead the effort. And to cut a long story short, it was highly effective. Thanks to our friends at McKinsey, we had a model for what the results would look like. And shockingly, the model has proven to be almost precisely correct. I mean, the variability over the last several years in terms of what was predicted and what actually happened is tiny. So that was like my massive inspiration. And by the end of September of 2020, I sat with my CHRO and I said, we have some behaviors that have changed in this company. We're keeping them. We have to keep them. And I realized that underneath that is really the principles of Agile and Agile ways of working, just way outside the normal course of Agile, which was, software development. So we went to work, and by April of 21, we launched a formal process. And then in June of 21, I think it was, we hired McKinsey, Michael and his team to help. And we went and we started with the executive team. We spent most of 2021 getting the executive team up the learning curve and living through all the challenges of skepticism and ignorance and general lack of familiarity. So that's a quick synopsis about how we got started and why.
Beautiful. Perhaps, Mark, just to give people a quick sense of, can you just share the scale of Hyatt, number of properties, number of employees, direct and indirect, just give people a sense of what we're talking about.
Yeah, we have 1,400 hotels roughly in 75 countries, about 190,000 employees. And we have something on the order of 27 brands. Depends on how you count certain of them. And we've also grown significantly in the last 5 years by acquisition. So we've doubled the number of luxury hotels, tripled the number of lifestyle hotels, and quadrupled the number of resorts that we have. So we've really sort of transformed the mix of our business as well. We headed into COVID with high proportion of our total purpose of visit being business travel, and we now have more than 50%, closer to 55% of our purpose of visit being leisure travel. So that's been a major shift in activity. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we have regional offices in Zurich, in Hong Kong, and then sub-regional offices in places like Tokyo, Singapore, Dubai, and the like.
Beautiful. Let's dig on a bit. You sort of teed up how you got started, and so as I recall, there were a couple of things that you felt were really important. So one was you really placed a lot of emphasis on senior leaders, particularly the executive team, right, the most senior leadership group in the company, and creating space and opportunity for that leadership team to learn, to become proficient in new ways of working, starting to shift how you operated as a leadership team, and particularly, paying attention to mindsets and shifting mindsets. And then secondly, you also sought to set up pretty quickly some initial, pilots, some initial initiatives to test out this kind of way of working. Can you share a bit about those early months and like why you thought those things were important and sort of how you went about it?
Yeah. So forgive my language here, but the bullshit meter at Hyatt is quite sensitive. So people are willing to believe if there's good evidence. So I would say that we had two proof points really in the middle of 2020 or the third quarter of 2020. By then, one was the funding model. Everyone recognized just how remarkable that was and how effective that way of working was. And secondly, we gained almost 30 points of market share in China from an innovation that the local team kind of figured out how to implement in the space of literally 3 weeks with WeChat. We set up a flagship store. And so the results from those two examples of, agile ways of working and actually doing, showing the results was all I really needed to get people out of their suspended disbelief or cognitive dissonance. What I recognize, though, is that at Hyatt, at least, if senior leaders are not bought in, I think you're basically cooked. Doesn't work to try to enlist a bottoms-up approach. I don't think it would have worked in our culture. Let me say that. But even the senior leaders needed a little bit of evidence that this was not just a frolic and detour that was in Mark's head and the flavor du jour. And so we had some good proof points, which was very important. Secondly, we continued, I became super inspired just working side by side with colleagues in hotels to help reopen them, listening to how things came about. I was in Orlando helping to reopen one of our resorts, and we toured some rooms that had been set up in the new fashion and looked at the rooms that were set up in the old fashion. And the major difference is that there was no materials whatsoever in the new setup. There was a simple QR code. And I said, where did that come from? And they said, oh, we downloaded it from Amazon and we loaded all the content digitally. And so that's what we did. And we put all the menus on a different QR code downstairs. And they said, Amazon. They said, yeah, it's like $1.10 per QR code. It's really worked well. And I said, did Chicago, meaning our headquarters team, did you talk to them about it? They said, no, we were worried that they would say no. And we would rather get it implemented and prove it out and then go to them and say, so this is working. Is there anything that we need to take into consideration? And this whole idea of asking for forgiveness instead of permission is something that appeals to me a great deal. So I latched onto that and said, we need action. We need to move fast because things are changing really, really quickly. And these are examples I talked about extensively. Like I shared my observations and my experiences with everybody at every chance I could get. And then we went through boot camp with my team, and they really experienced themselves how much was standing in the way of them behaving in that way. And I think the core, probably the most important recognition was so many decisions got delegated up in our organization, and leaders, the conception about what being a leader was, oh, I'm going to apply my expertise and bestow my wisdom upon my team and the company, as opposed to I'm going to be there learning side by side and keeping my mind wide open, because whatever ideas I had that worked 5 years ago are, proven to not work today. So we do need to discover new things, and I need to own that. I need to basically accept that and have that be a truth for me. And we have individual development plans, just to give you one reference point, individual development plans that reduce what you're working on to one thing, and it's a behavior. So at the beginning of 2022, I sat down and I thought really hard about this. And my one big thing for me personally was I needed to make many, many fewer decisions. So methodically over the course of the year, anything that hit my desk, I would look at it, I would scrutinize it and say, why is this here? Why do I need to make this decision? Do I need to make this decision? And by the way, why didn't someone down below me already make this decision. And so I started cutting back on it. I started sending things back to people saying, it's your call. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. If you want to talk, I'm here. But otherwise, you go for it. And it really has freed up a lot of my time, actually, where I don't have to sit there and pour over and get involved in understanding the backdrop for a lot of these things. But that modeling was critical, because I said to my team explicitly, I need you to be doing the same thing I'm doing. Like, your team needs to see you continuing to push down decision making. I think that's the single biggest challenge that our senior leaders had, and the thing that's taken it's taken hold in a big way. So I think the modeling actually has made a big difference.
There's no question that your personal commitment to this, in terms of your own thinking, style of leadership, way of engaging with people and modeling, as you say, has been very central to the story at Hyatt. Fast forwarding a little bit, and let me ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll open up and see if any of our participants would like to ask you some questions. A bit later, you decided it'd be important to engage the board in learning about this, which not every CEO has the confidence to do. So, just interested if you'd care to share just a little bit about why you did that, and sort of the experience of the board and what that led to.
Yeah, I was increasingly talking about the application of agile ways of working as a key cultural evolution, significant evolution of our culture and our way of working, which has implications for leadership development, for how we select future leaders, how we develop people to be future leaders. I'll go back and say this was actually in my mind even as early as April and May of 2020. It was extraordinarily painful, but we had to lay off about 35 or 40% of our, in that range, of all of our corporate staff at that time, because the company was losing copious amounts of cash every month that went by, and we didn't know how long this would last. And the single litmus test that I ask people to consider is, if you have two people that you are considering, one of whom has to be let go, pick the person who best represents growth mindset. That was the only screen that I asked people to apply, because I'm assuming that the skill sets that are required are going to get covered, because of course that's sort of you have to answer that question first. But that was the number one thing. And I said, and the reason is because we're going to go through a period of time here that could last for a long time, in which, open-mindedness and experimentation is going to be the critical success factor. It's going to be much more important than domain expertise. So that was always in my mind, and the board had heard me describe that at the time that we made that very consequential decision. And so they were more intrigued over time. And I said, and our chairman said to me, the board keeps hearing you talk about Agile, but I'm telling you, they really don't get it. They don't understand what it is. We probably need to have a practicum or some kind of immersion. And I quickly agreed. Michael, thank you for architecting and actually helping to develop all the curriculum. We just had 3 sessions. It wasn't like 35 sessions or something. And those 3 sessions were, what were they? Maybe 2 hours a piece, maybe two and a half max. And they were just on a quarterly basis for the next 3 board meetings. And they actually literally went through some of the exercises that we did as a team, including an electric maze activity, which was really eye-opening. I think that was a huge unlock for so many people. And I think that following that, there was a great deal of enthusiasm. And then just at the past board meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, several directors said, we want to continue to have some measure of continued learning about Agile and seeing more and more examples of how it's coming to life in the company. So we need to build it into future meetings. It doesn't have to be 2 hours, but we would like that. And I was really, you can imagine, I'm so committed to this that my feet haven't touched the ground since I heard that. Now I have to get back to work and figure out how we're going to be able to best engage them. I just thought it was really important for them to understand it, because it's a big issue, and I wanted them to be supportive, but also get it, like understand how we're building a different muscle.
Beautiful. Let me ask one more question, and then we'll open up. So fast forwarding a bit more, following that initial interaction with the board and their enthusiastic endorsement, I think it coalesced very well with where you were at in terms of your sensing of what was needed, and you took the decision together with the executive team to really scale this kind of enterprise-wide. Can you share just a couple of approaches that you're using in terms of really now embedding agility throughout the whole company globally?
Yeah. The first thing that we did is we selected just 4 areas that we thought were particularly vexatious, difficult problems, that would benefit from very new thinking and a different approach. And I'll give you, it's everything from trivial things. The 4 that we picked were enterprise-wide, but then when you drill down, I think that idea of let's go towards the things that we haven't been able to solve for a long time translated into what my team members were doing with their respective teams. And I'll give you one very simple example, which sounds trivial, but isn't. For, 15 years, we have had a problem. One of the big guest complaints has been TV remotes that don't work because the battery's gone dead. Now, in the infinite wisdom of some designer 25 years ago, the remotes that we used in our hotels were screwed behind. They were behind a plate on the back of the remote that was screwed in. So you needed a screwdriver to undo it, which meant a housekeeper couldn't just pop it open and replace the battery. You had to call engineering to do that. Again, the mass inefficiency of having siloed approach and not a collective cross-functional approach. And so several different hotels went about deciding how to address this issue. 2 of them came up with ideas, both of which are working extraordinarily well. Less time spent, complaints have dropped to essentially 0. And one was, we're going to get a new remote, and we're going to put batteries in the housekeeping carts, and the housekeepers can change those. And the other was that an engineer would do rounds with different housekeepers every day, and just on a continuous basis, and some of our hotels are quite large, make sure that everything is current. And both of those work really well. And there are others, I'm sure, that have been attempted. But we found unlocks for big issues working together. So that was one way to practice. The second thing that I did is asked every member of the senior leadership team to develop their own plan for scaling. It wasn't a formula to follow. It was what would work for their organization, for what they needed, because our chief legal officer and our chief financial officer, their plans look completely different than the person who runs Asia Pacific, right? Completely different. But I set out outcomes. I defined very clearly what the outcomes were that I wanted to see if we could achieve by the end of this year. And being very clear and getting alignment around those outcomes has allowed everyone to sort of say, okay, I get it. Now I have to go to work and start to experiment with what ways would be most effective in scaling. So as a consequence of that, we've got many experiments going on, even within individual regions, and we're sharing that out on a bi-monthly basis, which is helping to get people to clued into what things that they can try as well. So I think this constant check back in, called a retro in Agile speak, on a regular basis, and sharing kind of what the experiments are that are going well and ones that failed, is a great learning mechanism.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, Mark. Well,
yes.
Let's open it up. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this, but I'm sure
we have a lot of questions. Yeah, Michael, first of all, I can tell how proud you are. Proud partner. Great results. Mark, I was thinking, since I run transformation, you should give me your resume so you can work for me, because I have not met a CEO that talks as sexy as you do about Agile and knows exactly what he's saying. So send me your resume. I'm here.
Thank you.
So I wanted to say, first of all, I know how challenging it is. And what would you have done differently? If there's one thing you would have changed, what would you have changed? Because it's never always perfect.
Well, I have to say that for several months, I wrote my first introduction of this to the team in April of 2021. We didn't hold our boot camp until September of 2021. I probably, if I could turn back time, I would have probably had the team engage in that workshop right off the bat. First of all, I should have done it to understand what the unlock looked like and felt like. I mean, it really does leave you coming out of there saying, wow, now I've got to really rethink how I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think that would have accelerated everything because my team, and I don't know if it's true in general for all teams, the actual experience of it is worth 1,000-fold talking about it, looking at paper models of how agile processes and pods are supposed to work. The nomenclature got in the way, all of the terminology kind of was cumbersome. And I think that what we should have started with was an actual experience of it, personal experience of it, and that feeling. And I think that would have animated the motivation and we would have gone faster.
Thank you. So the job is still open. Michael will give you my email. Send me your resume.
Okay.
Any questions? And by the way, great information. Any questions? I'm inspired. He was so giddy. Did you see that, everyone? That was like passion. Okay, we got one.
Yeah, hi, I have a question for Mark. You mentioned something about having with the board. You did some exercises with the board meetings during those 2 hours. Could you just repeat your example of what you did there?
Yeah, there are two things that I think really stood out. We did many exercises, but there are two things that really stood out. One was Michael's terminology for it is an electric maze, which is like it's like a path to discover. It is like a maze that you have to navigate from one end to the other. You have to do it as a team. You can't speak, but you have to coordinate and you have to work together. And I'm not going to reveal exactly. You run it twice, and there's a reason that you end up running it twice. I'll give you the punchline on why you have to, because nobody makes it across in the allotted time in the first experiment. And we had two separate teams because we had enough directors to split it up, and both of them made it across with plenty of time to spare in the second. So I'll leave that with you to say, oh, I got to learn more about that. So that was one that really unlocked the mindset of a lot of our directors. And the second was we called it a gallery walk, or maybe that was McKinsey's terminology. It was specific examples from other companies and from Hyatt as to how Agile actually is applied, what ways of working were required in order to apply an Agile process, and how does that compare with what we used to do in a sequential sort of cascade siloed approach. And therefore, what's the so what there? What was the actual impact in terms of business results? And thankfully, McKinsey has a list of companies that have really practiced this at scale. So we had examples from other companies, but we also had Hyatt teams, and we brought in the actual practitioners. These were people at the manager director level, not senior vice president and above. And that was the second thing that really cemented in a lot of directors' minds, whoa, okay, I really understand now. This is a big departure in terms of how you do things, but what an impact. And I think that those two things together probably were the most transformative pieces.
I remember, Mark, one of the directors observing that when I saw the energy in the eyes of the Hyatt people that were there.
Exactly right.
It like really landed, right? That experience was amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, give us a second. Oh, we got two. Excellent. you're first.
All right. I'll run in real quick. Michael, this question's actually for you. What's unique about the experience you witnessed at Hyatt versus other transformations that you've watched?
Every organization is unique in terms of context. So there are kind of many unique aspects about Hyatt just because of, the organization, its history, the realities that it had been navigating, was still navigating, because of the pandemic. Honestly, I would say, Mark, the way you show up and have shown up through this has been rare. Arguably not unique, but definitely rare. To have a CEO truly commit in terms of personal shifts and learning and energy and really be at the core of this. And I think you correctly never articulated this as a transformation, which was one of the conversations I remember having early on. And that was unusual. Most companies, like, it's a big agile transformation. And this wasn't that. This was learning some very important new kind of ways of working and ways of operating, fusing it with Hyatt's practices and culture in a way that felt really good. It really became part of the Hyatt way, more than like this sort of agile thing where everybody's got to be scrum trained and all that kind of thing. It was more developing sort of agile practices and mindsets in a very Hyatt-like way that, to me, makes it really powerful and unique and in an important respect.
Yeah, we banned the word transformation because it necessarily means you're moving from this to this. It felt very static to me. I wanted this to be continuous evolution, but using these principles of how you work. So that's why that language became so critical to us.
Yeah, that's actually really, really interesting. I think Michael's trying to get you to stop working for me, Mark, because Michael knows I'm a transformation lead. So he's just really, we're vying for you. We both want you. So we have one more question.
Yes, this question is for Mark. I currently work at Assa Abloy with the development team that developed the Apple Wallet solution. We were talking the other day about maybe our limited knowledge about our customer and talking about collaborations. So I was wondering if there's anything you can send with me, any information or knowledge that I can bring to the development team that will help them create great products and solutions for you.
Yeah, so we had gone, first of all, thank you. You've been a great partner. And we've done a lot together to create that digital solution. So thank you very much. I would say the thing that occurs to me is we went through a very big push around design thinking back in 2012 with the D School at Stanford, and user-centered design and the application, the use of empathy as the very first step in a great design process matched up perfectly with our own culture, because our purpose as a company is to care for people so they can be their best. I'm not going to unpack that. We don't have time. But care is not the same as service. And you can serve someone without caring for them, but you can't care for someone without serving them. And the difference is empathy. You have to start with empathy. So I guess and so that's why design thinking, we rebranded as Hyatt Thinking, fits so beautifully into the Agile process. It's actually a component piece of it. And doing things that are effectively user focused in terms of the design process is one of the big unlocks, which meant you had to be up close and personal to the users. So the funding model work that I talked about, we had several of our largest third-party hotel owners sitting at the table while we designed the new funding model. Highly unusual. Like, people in our industry, the funding model issue is usually a point of contention. We invited people into the design room. We designed from scratch and launched a brand new brand called Hyatt Studios in 5 months. And there were more third-party outsider developers, that is people who were actually building hotels, at the table than there were people from our brand team or consumer insights team. They actually designed what we ended up launching. And it really shortened the time period that was required to actually design this thing. We started with 100 commitments to build, a commitment to build over 100 hotels. And the enthusiasm, the ownership that they felt was unbelievable. So I guess what I would say is, with respect to working more closely, get on property and actually witness and talk to housekeepers, talk to front desk agents, talk to guests, and get their experience and observe what you see. It's almost like some ethnography mixed with some real knowledge gain. But I would say there's absolutely zero substitution for being on the ground with users as you learn.
Great. So any other questions? Because I'd like to give Mark and Michael the chance to just close. But I want to say great job. I've learned a lot. I'm very excited, and I'm really serious about you working for me. So going once, going twice. Okay, so I'll give the floor to you two to close, and thank you once again.
Well, I'll give Michael the last word. I just want to start by saying thank you to him. I've told him that my whole world got thrown off kilter a little bit. My rotation around the sun is still a little askew because of his departure to go to Bayer, but he promises that we're going to stay in touch, and I'm going to hold him to that. So, Michael, thank you.
Excellent. And Michael?
Well, absolutely, Mark, and we'll certainly continue to be sharing experiences and learnings together as we go forward. Also, just want to express real gratitude to you for being here today. We knew it was going to be a lot of fun, and it certainly was. So it's been really great to connect and chat with you, and I'm sure a lot of great learnings for everybody in the conference here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.